Welcome to my channel. My name is Ria and today we're going to talk about the new moon happening in the sign of Cancer. So let's get started. So new moon is when new energy comes in, it seeds itself and we work on that energy for the next lunar month, for the next 28 days or so. So essentially it sets the base, it sets the energy in a very powerful way for the next 28 days, right? So this also means that we are ending the last month's new moon energy. So let's go back to last month. Last month we had a new moon in Gemini that was in a square, challenging aspect to Saturn, right? So what that did for us is it asked us to work hard, to get things organized, to set things right. It could have felt limiting. It could have felt like we needed to make some hard decisions. It could also have been a little bit about reworking certain things, right? But overall theme of that month was about getting organized, doing things that we might not have wanted to do but were necessary, and fixing things, right? If something's not working, fixing it, figuring out what's the best way. So that was the energy of last month. But since it was a square, it did require us to step up. It did require us to challenge ourselves. It did require us to work on ourselves to be able to make those tough decisions, do those hard things, get organized, remove something, get rid of something that might not have worked for us any longer, right? So now we are in the new moon in Cancer energy. So Cancer, generally speaking, is a moon ruled sign. It's about care, it's about nurture, it's about nourishment, it's about food, it's about rest, it's also about the home, the family, loved ones, close friends, our internal world, our emotions, right? So Cancer is a lot about our emotions and the people we love. So generally speaking, very generally speaking, these could be the big themes, but more important would be where this moon is falling for you. This moon is at 14 degrees of Cancer. So if you guys know your charts, look for 14 degrees of Cancer, and that's where this moon energy will be impacting you, that particular house. If you don't know your charts, that's also fine, because I will go through the overall energy of this moon in this video, and that is useful also, right? So I did mention that this moon is different. Last one was in a square 90-degree angle to Saturn. This one is aspecting Saturn again. That's Saturn. It's retrograde now, and Saturn is hard work, decisions, discipline, getting things done, setting things in stone, right? Commitment. That's also Saturn. And this one's making a 120-degree angle trine with the moon. Now there is a 5-degree difference. You can see the moon's at 14, Saturn's at 19, 5 degrees, but it's still close enough, right? And usually a trine is considered a helpful aspect, right? It's a lazy aspect, so to speak. A square, which is what we had last month, was a challenging aspect, right? This one's more of a helpful aspect. And what that tells me is that we stepped outside our comfort zone to make the necessary changes and decisions that were required last month. Now with this month, the work will still continue, but it's not as hard as last month. Think of it like pushing something, right? The initial push takes the most energy and then it kind of eases off. Then it's kind of just moving on its own. You're pushing it, but it's moving. There's movement to it. So think of it like that. Last month was the first push, and now it's like you're pushing, but it's kind of moving easily. That initial burst of strength and power is not required this month. So the work will continue. It is still about getting organized. It is still about working hard. It is still about all these things, but it's softer than last month. That being said, last month the moon was in Gemini, right? So we had to use facts, we had to use logic, we had to use our intellect to be able to decide. We had to compare facts, maybe think logically, not emotionally, to take those hard steps. This one is a little different because Cancer is an emotional sign, it's an intuitive sign, it's a psychic sort of energy, right? It feels, it knows, it does not think so much, it just feels, it's intuitive. So this month it's more about going with our intuition also, to be able to continue the changes that started last month. However, that being said, Saturn is a very practical sign. So in the search for intuition and like all that, don't forget the practicality. Practicality is very important. Moving on to the next thing, I just want to mention that if you look at the chart, right, we did have Venus here make the same aspect with Saturn about 2 days ago, right? 2 days before this moon, Venus made the same aspect. So couple of days before the moon, I would say, this process of things falling in place got easier, because if you think about it, a little while ago, Venus also did square Saturn, right? That's when we worked hard for things related to relationships, projects, finances, that sort of thing. And now it's trining Saturn. So whatever we started before, whatever we pushed for when it comes to relationships, finances, projects, self-worth, value, skills, now it's coming together. And this started about 2 days before the moon, because Venus did make that aspect with Saturn, which the moon is making, which the sun will make as it moves on after the new moon point, and the moon will make as it moves on, right? And what does that tell me? That tells me that the angle to Saturn will come exact after the peak of this moon energy. So this work continues for the whole month, but in a very strong way, at least for the next 4-5 days, as the sun and Saturn trine. And the moon will trine Saturn a few hours after the moon point. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. The next thing I want to discuss is that last moon, not the new moon also, but the full moon in Capricorn, we had about 20th of June, right around that date, we had both Neptune and Saturn direct, right? They were moving forward from the Earth's perspective. Now on this moon, right, both are retrograde. Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde. And retrogrades bring a period of review. They bring a period of revisiting old things. They also, in a way, bring back the rewards for the work we put in when the planet was direct. And not for the past week, but I think for Saturn, about 26th June to about, I think it was 3rd July, around that week, right? Saturn was stationary. And what does that mean? That means that Saturn did not move, right? It did not move forward. It did not move back. And what that can feel like is things are stuck. But now it's moving backwards, right? So there is some movement now. It's begun that review process, that retrograde process that I just spoke about. And Neptune is also retrograde, but it is stationary and will be for a little while longer. So this can also feel like things are a bit stagnant, right? So just keep that in mind. And this is not a permanent energy. The fact that Neptune is stationary, it will begin to move backwards, right? So then we'll start to review, we'll start to reanalyze, we'll start to rethink. And overall, what this means is that now we do have 3 major energies retrograde: Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, right? And as the year goes on, more and more retrogrades will happen. So we started off this year with a lot of forward moving energy, with a very fast pace of life. Things were happening, things were moving. And now things seem a bit slow. Now we kind of have to go back to what we started and rework those things, review those things, make them better, right? And Saturn here is asking for that as well, because it did ask us for hard decisions, It did ask us to get organized last month, and it continues to do so. But this month, let's just put it this way, it's going a little easy on us than it did last month. Okay, so that's that. I will try and bring this all together towards the end of the video. So moving on, we do have Saturn here. There's a lot about Saturn. And Mars here in an aspect, sextile, 60-degree angle, right? And this is also considered a helpful angle in astrology. And Saturn is decisions, it's commitments, it's hard work, yes, but it's also slow. It's about the long run. It's about planning. It's not about just going for things. That's Mars. Mars likes to just go for things. It likes to just take action. It likes to just do things without giving it too much thought. It's impulsive. It's aggressive. So the positive of this energy of Mars, Saturn together can be this very disciplined approach to taking action, this very long-term view of things to take action, but we need to make them work together, right? Because they are very different energies. Mars just likes to do things and Saturn likes to plan and then do things. It's slow. So here comes where we have to put in the work to balance these two out so that we can manifest it positively, right? In the negative, this can be frustrating. This can be like, I'm trying so hard, but why are things not moving? Why am I feeling stuck? And the fact that Saturn just retrograded and Neptune is has retrograded as well, the stuckness, the feeling of feeling stuck can be magnified. So it's very important we use this Saturn Mars in a positive way, and this is a helpful aspect. Nonetheless, we should try to think practically for the long run, do things in a slow, stable manner, and then take action. Right? And when we take action, this can be sustained action, because what can happen with Mars? Mars can just start things and then run out of fuel, run out of steam. So this combination, if we use it correctly, can give us that stability to take action in a sustained manner. But be mindful of getting frustrated, be mindful of aggression, because there's a feeling of feeling stuck. So that's another thing I wanted to mention. And let's talk about Mars Saturn a little bit more. Last time they were together was in the month of April. Mars and Saturn met up, and this was around the new moon solar eclipse we had in the month of April. So that's when they met up and they began this new 2-year cycle, and now they're making this positive aspect. So maybe something connected to April, right? Maybe something connected to that point where we are now thinking about it, thinking for the long run. There's a lot of change happening with the other energies anyway, and now we're thinking of the long run and how to take action for that. Moving on to the next thing. Speaking of Mars, Mars here is about to meet up Uranus, right? About 10 days after the moon, Mars will meet up with Uranus. Mars, like I just said, is action. It's aggressive as well. It's impulsive as well. And Uranus is sudden. It's a lot of energy. It can be very unpredictable. So what this can mean to me are two things, positive and negative, as always, right? In the positive, this can be sudden action. Maybe Uranus can also bring these insights, right? It's the planet of epiphanies and insights. It's like this, oh, I just figured it out. That is Uranus. So this can be this sudden epiphany as to, oh, I got this idea and now let me take action on it. Sudden action because of an insight or a realization or an epiphany. On the not so positive side, this can be a very volatile energy. This can be a very unpredictable energy. This can be a very accident prone energy. This is in an earth sign, Taurus. So this can be unpredictable energy when it comes to earth, right? This can be volatile energy when it comes to earth. So just keep these things in mind, and it would be best to be a little grounded, be a little stable during these times, and be a little cautious as well, right? We want to be a little cautious as well during this time. So about 10 days after the new moon. And yeah. Speaking of Uranus, let's talk about the next thing. It is in a semi-square with the North Node, right? And semi-square 45-degree angle is again a challenging aspect, right? This brings change. The North Node is the future. It's where we are headed. It's known as Rahu in Vedic astrology. And this can bring sudden changes to our path, to where we are headed, right? Could be because of an epiphany, could be because of an event. So just keep that in mind as well. And at the same time, we also have Jupiter here, getting ready to make a 60-degree angle with the North Node. Jupiter is lessons, it's blessings. So both these big energies are aspecting Rahu. Rahu is also, the North Node is the future and represents where we are headed and what we must aspire to, yes. But Rahu in Vedic astrology is also a very unpredictable sort of energy. Right, it's very unpredictable. It's about the ups and downs, right? Sudden ups, sudden downs. That's Rahu as well. So I would say that good to exercise caution at this point. Good to keep in mind that if you're having this insight about something, right, maybe consider it. I'm not saying act on it. Consider it, think it through. Saturn, go slow, plan, and then slowly act on it if you must. But the aspects are on, and Jupiter is considered a benefic in astrology, but it's also a teacher. It brings lessons. So there could be this lesson that we're all learning. There could be this teaching that we're all receiving, right? And this could be something sudden and unexpected as well. So just keep these things in mind. Okay, now speaking of Jupiter, and then going back to Saturn, Jupiter, Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces, Jupiter is in Gemini now. Naturally, Pisces and Gemini are in a square 90-degree angle, right? But what's happening now is Jupiter will square Saturn, right? They will get into that 90-degree configuration in about a month and a half. But right now you can see the orb, the degree difference is getting closer, which means the build up to that square energy has started. And if you recall, Jupiter and Saturn met up in 2020 December, right? They met up in Aquarius. And since then, Saturn has moved to this point and Jupiter has moved all the way to this point. And now they're making their first 90-degree angle. This is when there's a conjunction, as there was December 2020, it begins a new cycle. In this case, it was a 20-year cycle. Now, we're at that point where Jupiter and Saturn will begin their square 90-degree angle. So we're in the next step of that cycle, and squares mean change, it means challenge. So maybe something from 2020 December changing, something asking us to work so that we can change something from back then. So think of your life December 2020, maybe something is coming up where slowly it's changing, it's evolving, it's growing, and it may not feel comfortable because it's a square. That does not mean it's negative. Any change, usually I've noticed, any change for the positive or the negative feels uncomfortable, even if it's a positive change, right? If you're not used to something, it is uncomfortable. So don't take everything in a negative way. It's not always negative. It may be challenging. They're not synonymous, right? Challenging can be positive. Challenging can mean growth. Challenging can mean change. Challenging can mean better. So all these things, just keep those in mind. And yeah, that's that. Now, there's a lot to talk about actually. So I'm going to continue this video for a little while longer, although I think we're at 20 minutes now, but that's fine. Next thing I want to mention is the fact that I want to go back to the full moon in Capricorn that we had about 14 days ago. That full moon in Capricorn was at 1 degree of Capricorn, right? And we have another full moon this month at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So we have two full moons in the same sign, right, in the span of this month. And what that means to me is that this period between the last full moon and the upcoming full moon is about a process of change. It's a process of closure and endings as well, right? Because it's Capricorn. There's a lot that's happened in the sign of Capricorn. Pluto was in Capricorn for 16 years. Now it will go back into Capricorn September to November. It's not done with Capricorn yet. We had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn in 2020. In short, a lot of Capricorn we've been dealing with since 2008. Capricorn is a Saturn-ruled sign. It can feel restrictive, it can feel limiting, it can ask us to work hard, it can be very hard on us, right? Saturn, although it wants what's the best for us, it is a hard teacher. It's not an easy teacher. So we've been in this Capricornian sort of world since 2008, right? And now Pluto is in Aquarius, although I just mentioned it will go back. So we are not fully done with it, with Capricorn, whatever that cycle brought for us since 2008. Then 2023 March, it entered Aquarius, and then it went back into Capricorn, and then Jan this year, it entered Aquarius, and it's been there since then. So since Jan of 2024, we are seeing a lot of newness in a way that started March 2023, but the old energy of Capricorn is still with us, right? Because Pluto will go back into Capricorn for one last time. And finally, in November of this year, it will enter Aquarius for good. So what that means is we are still wrapping up energies, events, cycles, themes associated with Capricorn. And the full moon in Capricorn last month, June 20th or so, and the full moon in Capricorn again on July 20th or so, is a big part of that closing process, right? And Capricorn by itself is decisions, it's commitments, Saturn ruled sign, it's karmic, it's destined. So a lot of past coming back up for closure, you can say. This new moon in Capricorn, which happened in Jan, was square the nodes, again karmic. New moons bring new beginnings, but Pluto was still in Capricorn with that new moon, right? So we were not fully in the Pluto and Aquarius energy. So what started with the new moon in Capricorn, square the nodes, did bring a lot of change, yes. And a few days after that, Pluto did enter Aquarius, so newness, yes. But it did also begin a process of ending the past in a big way. And these two moons, right, will close out that process. Because next year, when we have the new moon in Capricorn, Pluto will not be in Capricorn. So what I'm trying to say in short is, last month into this month with the full moons, it's a process of closing out something that's been with us for at least 16 years, Pluto in Capricorn, and we're working on that closure. So why I'm bringing up this energy is because with this new moon, we are still continuing that process of ending things, right? And that's what I just want to mention. I will go into detail about the full moon in Capricorn in my next moon video, which is the full moon in Capricorn video, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. So I think that covers it. So to sum it up, I would say that we are in process, right? We are in the process of closing things out, whether that's Pluto and Capricorn energy, whether that's the changes that started last month with the new moon in Gemini square Saturn. We are continuing that, right? Last month was the trigger point of those changes. This month is more like the completion of the process of those changes. Last month, anything when we begin feels challenging. Last month was challenging. This month, the process continues. Maybe not as challenging because we've taken those tough decisions. We've made those tough calls, right? I forgot to mention, but Venus is also building up its square to Chiron, and this will happen about a day after the new moon. And what this means is that a day after the new moon, we might not feel the best about our relationships and projects, but this is, I would call it a misleading energy. And don't get me wrong, misleading in the way that we feel like things are not working for us. But what Chiron wants for us to do is to go within, to figure out why are you feeling this way, like what's triggering this, so that we can heal, so that we can get better. So it makes us feel a little not the best so that we can feel better. So just keep that in mind. Now coming back to this energy, so we are in that process of change, closing things out, and it continues. We have Mars and Saturn making an aspect. So if there are things to do, if you want to take action, think it through. Good time to take sustained action, right? We can begin to receive epiphanies and insights that can spur action as well. But with Saturn there aspecting the moon, just think things through before acting on it. Towards the mid of this month, we will also have Mars and Uranus meet up. Again, insights that can lead to action, but very volatile energy. It's best to exercise caution during this time when Mars and Uranus are getting closer and closer. Uranus is aspecting Rahu, so is Jupiter. Again, a sudden energy is there, a lesson is there for us, so just keep those things in mind. And that sums it up. We also have 2 planets retrograde that were not retrograde on the last moon, which means things are slowing down, which means things are up for review. And this time, right, the past few days could have been a feeling where we feel stuck, but just keep that in mind that it's because of these 2 planets, they were not moving. So Saturn is now moving backwards, so it should get a little better. So that sums it up. So I hope it was useful, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.